Welcome to the Week 10 SCPI Football Podcast. Alongside Keith the Molder, I am Connor Morissette. Keith, as always, we got the new top 10, some game balls, some picks. It was a good week for City Section football. I know you were at Eagle Rock, so let's get a little update from there.
Yeah, it was a great game over there at Eagle Rock, taking on the Northern League title. They won it. They were playing Marshall, home game, great crowd turnout. Davey Stone, once again, stone cold in his performance, multiple touchdowns. They got the victory, the Northern League title, and I could see them being in the open division.
Yeah, me too. For a Division II team, that would be a huge accomplishment, and they might end up there. Remember, they've had some big wins so far this year, taking down Southgate, and they had a huge win over Torres. And you're right, for a Division II team, it's going to be so hard, but they have the resume right now and only the one loss, so we'll get to them in a little bit. But real quick on the open division, how exciting is this going to be, and how tough is it going to be to narrow down 8 teams? Because right now there are probably 3 or 4 who have a shot, and really there's going to be 8 in front of them. So we'll get to that in a little bit. Of course, there's still some league games to be played. For example, Southgate, who starts our top 10 at number 10, they play at Huntington Park next game. So they lose that game, kiss the open division goodbye. But if they win, that's another quality win for them, a top 20 LA City Section team. Pretty crazy. But let's reset with Southgate real quick. Yeah. They crushed Roosevelt 49-20 on the road, Huntington Park next, like I mentioned. They've won 6 in a row. And open division indicator will be this next game I have on my notes. It's Huntington Park. They've won big ones. They've beaten Palisades.
Yep.
So that's probably their biggest win on the year. They've beaten Garfield, who's ranked 14th according to Max Preps. Ernie Arcia, the quarterback for them, has been dynamite. Winning 6 in a row is tough to do, and they've done it.
Yeah, huge game, and also a huge game coming up against Huntington Park. Huntington Park, the #1 offense there in Division II. So it'll be interesting to see how they perform. That said, Southgate, 3 picks on defense. Ernie Arcia, he needs some offers, folks. This guy is unbelievable. 22 for 30, 411 yards, and 5 touchdowns. The wide receiving core was unreal as well. William Lucas, 9 receptions, 190 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And Dondell Findley with 6 receptions, 116 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Also, Arcia, 83 yards rushing. He could do it all. That said, Carlos Sanchez as well, 13 carries for 152 yards. For Southgate, their offense is really humming. And as I said, Huntington Park, this will be a huge test for them. Can they stop a resurging Huntington Park offense? Who knows?
Yeah, it'll be a tough game for them, but hey, they've won 6 straight, so I'm sure they can do it. And you mentioned Ernie Arcia. He got a game ball from me last week. Tremendous player. At 9, Birmingham, the biggest droppers in the poll this week. They were as high as 4 last week. Now they're 9 after losing on the road at El Camino Real, a team that's playing a lot better, so I want to give them credit. But I don't know if Birmingham's going to make the open division anymore because their league, the West Valley League, it's so bad.
Yeah.
It's them and it's El Camino Real, so you had the one chance to get a quality win and you lose. I know it's on the road. It was a close game, but they might be on the outside looking in. They play Cleveland next, which is a middle-of-the-pack West Valley team, and then they'll end the year with an easy one. So, they needed that win against El Camino Real to cement themselves in the open division. Now they haven't done it, and that's a question mark. They're not going to win the league, it looks like, because I think El Camino Real, they play Granada Hills and then Taft, which they should roll in both of those.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a shame to see, considering that Birmingham, we had them so high because they had some great performances against Southern Section teams this year. They had a 14-7 lead in that game against El Camino Real, and they blew it in the last couple minutes of that game. That said, El Camino Real, as you said, not a horrible team per se.
They're a good team.
They played against some big Southern Section teams and played them tight. That said, it'll be tough for Birmingham to get into the open division if, number one, they lose either of the 2 next games.
If they lose one of them, I think that's it.
Yeah. But what I think they need to do in these next 2 games is win convincingly. Less than 40 points is unacceptable. They need to go hard in these next 2 weeks if they're going to try and scrape that open division.
Yep, like I said earlier, Cleveland next for them, so it's tough if you're a Birmingham student, Birmingham fan, Birmingham player, but like you said, Keith, if they win convincingly, they could get back into the conversation, but it will be difficult. At 8, Banning, they crushed Gardena on the road 47-0 in their last game. Now they play San Pedro. It's their homecoming. That's a huge game. I think the winner of that one gets into the open division.
Yeah.
So who's the 3rd team in the Marin League? Is it Banning or is it San Pedro? Who's more legit? That's what I have here on my notes, and we're going to find out on Friday when those 2 teams face off.
Right.
Banning and San Pedro both got killed by Narbonne, so I don't think we can really read too much into that game. It's all about these middling teams in the Marine League, and two of them right now. I think Carson has cemented itself as number 2. So now, who's going to be 3? Is it Banning or San Pedro? We'll find out.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I would. My gut reaction tells me San Pedro. But, looking at Banning, they had a 47-0 win over Gardena. Not saying much considering Gardena this year has allowed 377 points and scored just 28. So they've been blown out early and often. That said, Banning, their impressive win was over Southgate, 35-21, so a 14-point win. Huge for them. Banning, I don't know what we've seen from them this year in terms of quality wins other than that Southgate victory. They play Carson and San Pedro. Those will be tests. If they get 2 wins against those teams, they'll be the second team in that Marine League.
So I bet some El Camino Real fans are thinking, what does El Camino Real have to do to get into the top 10? The issue with them is they lost to Agora by 1 point, a team that Birmingham beat. They lost to Venice, who's going to come up in our top 10. Very close game. So they've had opportunities, and they haven't taken them. Banning, their 2 opportunities were Southgate and Narbonne. Narbonne, obviously, it's impossible pretty much to take a game against them, but they beat Southgate, so that's a quality win. And really, they've looked a little bit more convincing, I think, than El Camino Real. That slow start for the Conquistadors is what really killed them, and they'll just have to finish the West Valley League really strong to have some consideration. But I'm just a little bit nervous that they didn't do enough in the non-league to get into that open division. So that's really our thought process there, because Banning, they do have similar resumes. Both have won against one top 10 team, but I think Banning did a little bit more in that non-league schedule, so that's kind of the rationale from us. At 7, Eagle Rock, they have the best record of any team in the poll. They're 7-1. You were at the game. They beat Marshall 48-7 in their last game. They play at Lincoln next, who's 1-7, so they're rolling that one. Davey Stone, their quarterback, has been great, and Keith, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Eagle Rock, incredible talent on both sides of the ball. They had a fantastic game. Davy Jones, 4 total touchdowns. He had 1 rushing, 3 through the air. It wasn't even close in the second half. They scored 28 points in the third quarter. They started a little bit slow, and talking with Stone after the game, he said that the coach, their coach really got into him, saying, we need to score more points than this. We're better than this. And clearly they showed it in the second half. A huge performance from their backups as well. That said, looking at this team overall, right now, they are the best defense in Division II. Just 128 points allowed this season. They're the second best offense, 341 points. That said, we'll see how they do come the rest of their schedule. They should have some big wins. But that said, they've had a win over Southgate early on, and then they had a loss to Fairfax. That one a 38-27 loss. So they can compete with the big boys. They competed with Fairfax, played them pretty tight. So it'll be interesting to see if they end up coming up from D2 into that open division.
Yeah, and right now, if the season ended today, it looks like they would. Very exciting team to watch. At 6, Venice 5-3. They beat University in their last game 36-0. The big game for them is the next game at Palisades. The winner of that game, I don't want to say definitively gets into the open division because some things can still happen, but the winner of that game definitively gets into our top 10. So you can take that for what it's worth. For Venice, they've scored over 35 points in their last 3. And then, like I said here, a win at Pally will keep them in the top 8.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Looking at their offense, it's really been humming. As we said, Bryson Tremaine, we got to give him a shout-out. He had an offer recently from Stanford University.
Visited Stanford. Does not have the offer yet.
Does not have the offer yet. Okay, well, there you go.
Official visit, he's waiting on a couple of decisions, so maybe if Stanford doesn't get some recruits, he might get that offer. He's feeling good about it, and we wish him the best because he's probably the best non-Narbonne player in the section.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. And looking at his quarterback, Dion Moore, 9 for 10. Only 1 incompletion that entire game. 270 yards, 3 touchdowns. Looking at the run game, 101 yards, 6.7 yards per carry. So on both sides of the ball, they could do it. Dion Moore, he had 7 different receivers. Just goes to show you how many different weapons are on this Venice team. Tremaine, he had 2 receptions for 39 yards in that game. It was 29-0 at the half, so they were just running away with it. That said, they'll have huge tests coming up, Pally, as you mentioned, and then Fairfax the next week. They had the best defense, in my opinion, in that league, and I think they could, take some teams by storm.
There's the analysis from Keith there for Venice at 5, San Pedro. So they're looking for a quality win.
Yeah.
And they'll have a chance to do it on the road against Banning in their next game, but they just came off a thumping from Narbonne, 57-7. So that's 2 straight losses to 2 top 3 teams. So why are they so high? It's because, they're taking on some of the best competition. They just need that victory because right now their biggest resume kind of builder is that they really kept it close with a very talented Lawndale team, but it's getting close to the end of the season. We need to see some wins from them. If they lose to Banning, I don't think they get into the Open Division.
No, I don't think so either. And that said, it's homecoming at Banning, so they kind of play spoiler, not just in the fact that they're going on the road, but the fact that Banning's also a top 10 team as well. It's hard when you have such a horrible loss at home against a great team like Narbonne. Their defense did have 2 picks, but that said, the amount of points they allowed was just, you can't excuse that, really, if you're going to try and be a top 10 team. They've played some teams tight this entire year. They've looked good at times, but clearly against some of this tougher competition, not as good. It'll be interesting to see how they play Banning and then their final game of the regular season, too.
The key defender for them, Junior Gaffa, is out with a concussion, so that has hurt them a little bit. But hey, everyone's banged up this time of year. San Pedro needs to get that win. At 4, we have Fairfax. They're 6-2. They just crushed Hamilton 54-7. They play at Westchester next, which I think, Keith, will be a tricky one for them.
Right.
Westchester's been in every city section game they've played this year. They just have a tendency to lose steam. So I think it'll be close, but I do think Fairfax will win, but it's going to be tough. Fairfax, 5 games, 1 in a row, and they've beaten Palisades and Eagle Rock, which is their 2 big games and why they're so high in the poll at 4.
Yeah, absolutely. And also looking at their offense, Scott Harris, 11 of 19 last game, 160 yards and a touchdown. Also had 5 rushes for 27 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. They can do it, though, on both sides of the ball. They held Hamilton to just 65 yards and a touchdown through the air as well. Anthony Beeler on the special team side, he had a 90-yard punt return, for a touchdown as well. He had a receiving touchdown. And this offense running the football, 23 rushes for 151 yards and 6 TDs. They're certainly on fire right now, and I see them bringing that into Westchester. They're playing on the road, could be tough.
At 3, we have Carson. They're 5-3. They just beat George Washington Prep 54-12. Play Gardena next. That should be an easy game for them. They're high at the number 3 spot in our poll because that win over San Pedro. That's been the key for them, and why they're so high in the poll. They were looking for that big win. When was it going to come? Was it going to be Quartz Hill in a Southern Section team, the non-league? No, they lost a close one. Was it going to be Narbonne on the road? No, they got blown out. San Pedro at home, that was their opportunity. They took it, and that's why they're 3.
Yeah, absolutely. They kind of lit their fire, so to speak, within that very competitive Marine League. They don't like to pass the football a lot, Jaja Bellinger, just 1 of 3 for 17 yards. That said, the running game explosive all night. 20 rushes, 253 yards, 7 touchdowns. And looking at the transfer, Fuimano, a pick 6 and a 12-yard rushing touchdown. So clearly these transfers helping Carson, and their offense is just huge. That said, when they play, potentially Narbonne in the CIF playoffs, if their defense kind of hones in on their rushing attack, maybe they're too one-dimensional.
Denalen Fuimano just committed to San Diego State, so he's the player to watch. But I agree, the play of Bellinger will be key in the future, their quarterback. Into the top 2, same 2 teams we've had for a while. Crenshaw at 2, Narbonne at 1. Crenshaw, 47-0 win over View Park. They play at Hawkins next. Get ready for this stat, Keith. They've outscored their opponents 158-14 in their last 3 games, averaging over 50 points a game, which is miraculous. Look out for them. The offense is loaded and the defense is stepping up. I really hope it's a Narbonne-Crenshaw Open Division Championship because I think those 2 teams deserve it and are the best.
Yeah, Solomon Hashen, the sophomore running back, the transfer from LA High. A lot of these transfers from LA High, the former Romans, they're coming in clutch for these Crenshaw Cougars. A 47-0 victory. View Park not the best of teams. That said, they've played very well. They haven't had many poor losses this year, and I see them, as you said, being in the championship game with Narbonne.
At 1, Narbonne, as we mentioned, I was at their game on the road against San Pedro. They won 57-7. They played George Washington Prep next. They'll roll in that game. With that win, Narbonne wins the Marine League, so congratulations to them. Jalen Chapman had 4 touchdowns, couple picks, but looked great overall. J.J. Tucker caught 2 of those touchdown passes from Chapman. Jermar Jefferson ran for a couple scores, the running back. The defense for Narbonne, Division I talent everywhere, very, very solid, but the offense was the takeaway that I had. The offense looked fantastic. They love to spread it out. And first play from scrimmage, Chapman hits Tucker for an 82-yard touchdown pass. Narbonne, they knew what they wanted. They got after it immediately. That offense is almost impossible to stop if you're an LA City section team. And, San Pedro, they're number 5 in our poll. It's not like Narbonne played against a George Washington Prep
right.
or a team like that. They took on a legitimate team and they crushed them.
Yeah, it's no contest really when you get to that offensive line. The fact that they like to spread it out on the offensive line from tackle to tackle, they spread out the defense and it makes the defense susceptible to big runs and big plays down the field. Jamar Jefferson, another example of that, 129 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jalen Chapman, 21 for 28. Working on his accuracy, that's what I like to see. The fact that he's completing passes at a high rate, 380 yards, unbelievable performance from that offense. And the fact that you're up 50-7 on San Pedro at the end of 3 just goes to show you how talented this team is, and I see them winning it all.
As do I. So there's your top 10. 10 Southgate, 9 Birmingham, 8 Banning, 7 Eagle Rock, 6 Venice, 5 San Pedro, 4 Fairfax, 3 Carson, 2 Crenshaw, and 1 Narbonne. All right, Keith, time for our Game Ball segment where we highlight some of the players of the week in the LA City section. As is tradition, you go first, so who do you have this week?
All right, so my 2 game balls go to Isaiah Chapman as well as Ernie Arcia from Southgate. Isaiah Chapman, there's another Chapman in the section that we'd like to give a shout out to from Belmont High School, 279 yards, 2 touchdowns on 22 carries last week. He is second in the section to Daquan Gilmore. Right now he has 1,524 yards and 13 touchdowns. So Isaiah Chapman, you get a game ball from me. And Ernie Arcia, the best scoring offense in D1, that being Southgate. He had an unbelievable game for Southgate, 22 for 30 for 411 yards, 5 touchdowns. He also had 83 yards rushing, so he can do it on both sides of the ball. Ernie Arcia and Isaiah Chapman, you get game balls from me.
Back-to-back weeks for Arcia getting a game ball. Remember, he led Southgate to a win over Garfield last week. They were down 21-0 after the first quarter, down 14 in the second half, and end up winning 49-48 after Arcia tossed a successful 2-point conversion. He's a gamer, and he looks really, really strong.
Oh, yeah.
All right, my 2 game balls. We've already heard their names on this podcast, but I'll repeat them. First one, Narbonne receiver J.J. Tucker. Caught 4 passes for 129 yards, including 2 touchdowns. He had an 82-yard long touchdown in that game, the first play from scrimmage. Anytime you can stretch the field like that, I don't care what team you're playing for, I'm impressed. So he gets the game ball for me. Congrats, J.J. Tucker. And then Dion Moore. This is Venice's backup quarterback. This is a kid who wasn't expecting to play quarterback. Luca DeMont is Venice's quarterback. He has a concussion, can't play. Dion Moore steps in. He's been fantastic for the Gondoliers. And in Venice's last game against University, Keith, you mentioned it earlier, Moore, 9 of 10 for 270 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's great for a starter. That's great for anyone. I don't care who you are. Moore's the backup. He's playing like a starter, and Venice has a real shot in that Western League. Playing Palisades this week, it'll be very tough, but they have a real opportunity, and then they're going to take on Fairfax. So if Venice beats Palisades, that game against Fairfax will be immense for that Western League championship. So congrats to J.J. Tucker and Dion Moore. Those are my game balls this week. Keith, you ready to move on to some picks?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's get into it.
All right, so last week only 3 games picked. This week we have 4, so competition is a little bit better this time around. First, Fairfax at Westchester. Who do you like?
I like Fairfax. I think Kevon Johnwell and of course Scott Harris, the quarterback. Their offense is loaded and their defense one of the best in the section. I see them taking it away, but I think Westchester puts up a fight early, and I see them taking it down to maybe the 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter and Fairfax pulling it out.
I like Fairfax 31-21 over Westchester in that one. Second game, San Pedro at Banning.
I'm going to have to go with San Pedro on this one. I think Banning, they're good. They're very good, but they haven't played as tough of teams this year. I think their next 2 games will show us who exactly they are against San Pedro as well. Carson, the final game of their season. So I like San Pedro. Obviously, they have some injury concerns, but I think that their offense will carry them in this one.
I'm taking Banning by 3. I just have that feeling. Looking at the games we're picking, I should say, I have picked 3 away teams, so I'm going to take the home team in this one. I think Banning squeaks out a win over San Pedro to get that open division spot and say to San Pedro, hey, not this year for you guys. Could go either way, though.
Yeah.
I don't know. My heart's telling me Banning, so I'm taking Banning. At 3, Venice at Palisades. Who do you like?
The Palisades, you've been to Palisades. We've both been to Palisades. Their home field advantage is surely a thing. They have so many fans that come out to those games. That said, their offense not nearly as good as it should be, especially through the air. That said, Venice loves to throw the football, and they can do it very well. So I see Venice in that game, actually. Even though I love my Palisades Dolphins, I'm going to have to go with the Gondos.
I have Venice as well. I think they're going to be able to put up more points than Palisades. And remember, when Fairfax played Palisades, 14 points was enough. So if the Venice defense shows up, that'll be very important because you might not need to score too many against this Palisades passing attack that has struggled. I think it's going to be a bit more high scoring than 14-7. I think Fairfax's defense is a bit better than Venice's, so I'm looking at more of like a 24-20 kind of game. Palisades defense is legit, though, and it's going to be very difficult for Venice to score the ball, but here's where I think the difference lies. Palisades, where are all their D1 players? They're on the line.
Right.
They're not in the secondary. So Bryson Tremaine should be able to get open, and if Dion Moore can scramble and get the ball to Tremaine, I think that's going to be good for Venice, and that'll help them to victory, so that's my prediction there. And then the last game, Southgate at Huntington Park. This one has shootout written all over it. This one could go both ways.
It's very tough because Huntington Park, their offense is so loaded. I'm going to have to go with them, I think.
Wow.
I think that the fact that their offense has been so good. Southgate, Ernie Garcia, he's the man. But I don't know. I think I smell an upset. I think I smell an upset this week.
All right, you heard it from Keith. I disagree. I think it's going to be Southgate. They've won 6 in a row, and I don't think a Division II opponent, although a very strong Division II opponent, will end that streak. So I take Southgate. I'm surprised you're picking against Ernie Garcia after giving him the game ball.
Listen, Ernie Garcia, you're my guy. You're my guy. But I think what I saw in that Garfield game, that they could have easily lost that game.
Absolutely.
But Ernie Garcia, his heroics, clearly saving this defense that has been tested this year. And that said, with the Huntington Park offense as good as it is, I see them just, it's going to be a shootout. And I don't know. I think that Huntington Park could have the edge.
This has been the Week 10 SCPI Football Podcast. For Keith the Molder, I'm Connor Morissette. We'll see you next time.